Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show. Today I'm speaking with someone who has spent over 30 years in helping founders, entrepreneurs, and business leaders truly understand sales, marketing, and business development. John Watson, president of Accrue Markets and author of Being Profitable, a business development roadmap. John's work is grounded in clarity, value, fundamental, and leadership. As a countless business owner, make the shift from random acts to marketing to building a structured, profitable, and customer-centered system. His approach combines strategy, mindfulness, and real business discipline. I'm excited to learn from his experience and break down the mindset and structures behind profitable marketing. It's really a pleasure having you on the show, John.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
John, what was it like growing up?
I grew up in a very blue-collar town, Windsor, Ontario, which is right next door to Detroit, Michigan, automotive capital of Canada. And so assembly line, blue-collar work was pretty much the whole town. So that was where and actually a big part of my connection to that has been the whole manufacturing process. Really, was sort of what I grew up with, was really thinking about manufacturing and how that works. And so I really brought that along with me for the ride.
Amazing. What was your first experience when it comes to the first job you did, and how did that shape your work ethic and how you view jobs?
I have worked, I guess when I first started, I was always in some sort of customer service, consultative selling service role, mostly. So I was always customer centric, I guess it was always something about helping the client understand, helping them make a good decision, and then supporting them over time. I mean, even on my first job, I was 13 and I was doing that.
That was pretty
So
early.
it's just been a long haul of thinking like the customer.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So what is the biggest challenge you see business owner facing with sales and marketing today?
I think the biggest challenge is most people don't know what sales marketing is. They tend to mistake it for a bunch of tactics, promotional advertising, websites, social media. It's tactic, tactic, tactic. That's not really what it is. Those are the activities that result from good marketing and sales strategy, ideally. But more often than not, what people do is they see these things all over the place. They're surrounded by the activities. And so they jump right in without really having a clear sense of how they're going to work. How are they going to generate results? How do I get money back from my investment?
Yeah.
And the biggest problem I see is that it doesn't happen. They jump in without a plan, hoping for the best is kind of the strategy, and it doesn't often turn out very well. And so that's the single biggest thing I run into with any kind of business, regardless of if it's blue collar, white collar, professional, whatever. It's universal.
True.
It is the problem that I just see everywhere.
Yeah. So you talk about focusing on the fundamental. What does fundamental means to you?
Well, business is really, I guess, two things. If you're going to be a small business owner, the business is really all about, why do we get into business, right? We get into it because we want the money, we want freedom, we want control over our lives. And in order for that to happen, we need to have a clear message. We need to know who our clients are. We need to be able to deliver value. We need to get paid for that in such a way that we can fund our life and continue with the business. And so the fundamentals are rooted in those principles, which is who am I? What value do I bring to the table? Who do I serve? How do I make money doing it? And then how do I compete with my competitors, right? What's my competitive advantage? And there's a whole economic underpinning to that, which a lot of people, don't really understand. Looking at marketing and sales, it's all driven out of economics, the sort of the fundamental economics of the business. And it gets washed over because it's hard. We don't have any experience with it. I know I didn't when I first started. And we're just kind of thinking about the activities as opposed to how do I earn money from this? And then it's not even just sales, because you can make unprofitable sales all day long. But the challenge is, how do I generate long-term lifetime value, high profit margins, and ultimately develop a sustainable business. And that tends to get washed over. We tend to think, this is what I do, this is how I do it. We get very operations oriented. and we forget to really dig into the core fundamentals of the business. And I'm not talking about accounting. I'm just talking about the basic, how does this business work? How do we make money? How do we create value for people and ultimately a living for ourselves?
Yeah, amazing.
It's all fundamentals.
Yeah, so true. You have guided a business owner for 30 years. What is one mindset shift you which every founders understood early?
Mindset shift is, I think the biggest mindset shift is, I would say, kind of combination, two mindset shifts, I guess. One is thinking like the customer is probably the biggest one. That's challenging. And also taking ownership of the business development process. I know one of the big challenges I find is people have a really difficult time thinking like somebody else. I think
Yeah,
most of us have a hard time thinking like somebody else. And sales and marketing is all about thinking about your business from somebody else's perspective. What's in it for me, right? Is really how people are showing up. And we're busy explaining who we are and what we do and all the stuff about us. And they don't care. What they want to know is how do they get value? So helping people make that shift into the thinking like the other person, how do I create value for them and help them understand that is really big mindset shift. The other one is ownership. Sales and marketing is such a foreign area. It's unfamiliar for most of us. And there's a tendency to slough it off on somebody else. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. It might as well be ancient Greek. And I just want somebody to do it for me. And it's that mindset of abdicating responsibility to something that's absolutely critical to your business
yeah,
is hugely problematic. It generates a lot of waste, a lot of wasted money and a lot of unprofitable outcomes. And it is really hard to get over because we really don't want to learn how to do it.
that's it.
And it's not like we have to learn how to do it. We just have to understand it so that we can direct people and give them good direction,
Yeah,
right?
thank
Which is different than knowing all the bells and
yeah,
whistles of it.
yeah. So what does it look like when a business owner actually lead their marketing instead of leaving it to vendors?
Well, it looks like I usually try to bring them into the math to start with. And I don't mean complicated, I mean like grade 8 algebra kind of
Yeah.
math, which is not, it's like really basic funnel statistics, right? And this is how we're going to generate a customer. This is what the unit cost is. This is sort of a lead offer, and really work them all the way through the funnel from the beginning of the customer relationship to the end of the customer relationship. And look at the math. This is how the business actually works. And if we're going to do sales and marketing, it has to live inside these performance constraints. Otherwise, it isn't going to work. And that basic funnel is the most important thing. People, if you don't know your lead offers and who you serve and how your funnel works, you should not be spending any money on marketing until you do. And it's not something that takes an enormous amount of time. Most of the time, it's a day and a half. And you can pull the basics of your business together and really understand it from an entirely different perspective. And it puts you in the driver's seat. It's like I'm now driving the car. I understand this is what has to happen. And then the next step is, and so if I'm just getting started, then I can design the whole
Yeah.
business around that. If I have an existing business, then I can look at, all right, let's start filling in the actuals at each one of these steps so we can see what's really happening and just how far off we are from a workable scenario. And as soon as you get your head around that, it changes everything because now you're asking better questions, you're demanding more from your suppliers. You can engage with them in a different way. You can say, look, I don't want you to just execute this. I need it to work this well. Otherwise it isn't going to work. We can't continue. And so you can start designing a whole process to meet your needs as opposed to getting busy on a bunch of activities and hoping they're going to work.
Oh, amazing. Thanks for that particular insight, John. So let's talk about your core business and relationship development objective. Why did you structure the book around this particular sequence?
Well, the book is really about this whole ownership idea. I call it random acts of marketing, right? It's
Yeah.
trying to get people to stop with the random acts and start owning the process. And so one of the ways that I try to get people to shift out of the activities focus into a behavioral focus is that whole idea of ownership that we talked about. I remember when I first started my very first business, I was a young man, didn't have a lot of experience. I was entrepreneurial and full of energy, but not a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And I went looking for help. I said, look, I don't understand this process very well. I sought help all over the place, literally coaches and consultants and agencies, you name it, and anybody that would talk to me. And I said, look, I want you to help me understand the process. I don't want to just hire you to get something done. I want you to show me where what you do fits into the overall process, because I didn't get the process. I didn't understand the roadmap. And so over the years, I've looked for the roadmap. I mean, it's been 30 years I've been looking for this bloody roadmap, and it doesn't exist, right? You have to create it for yourself. And it's very difficult to sort of wade through all the little tidbits of information to try to put it into a logical rollout structure. And so I wanted to create a rollout structure. The book is all about that roadmap that I wanted when I first started. But I didn't want to put it into tactic language. I wanted to put it into who do we need to be in order to achieve the outcome we want. And I've structured that in 20 steps. There's a 20-step sequence. That's all about who do I need to be. So for example, the very first way of being would be to be clear. What am I trying to do? What are my goals? What am I trying to create here? You know, that whole clarity piece is really important. And most of us skip past it. We get really sort of general in our ideas, kind of airy, kind of blue sky stuff. And it's just not clear. And it's very difficult for anybody to help you if you're not clear what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
The second way of being would be to be committed, right? So have I done enough homework? Am I clear enough? And do I believe in what I'm doing here and selling to be able to invest in making it happen? And most of us aren't clear to start with, and you can't commit to something that you're unclear on,
Yeah.
right? And if you've never done the math and you can't prove it to yourself that this is viable and potentially, where there's a high probability of success, then you hedge. You spend whatever little money that you can and whatever's little bit of time that you can put into it, right? So it's all discretionary money, discretionary time. And if it requires a big level of investment, we're scared to do it because we don't believe in our business model. Because we haven't built something that was actually worthy of investment. And so that's an example of, like, there's 20 of those steps that ultimately start with, do we know what we're trying to do here? We have a good enough handle on it from an economics and a core fundamentals perspective that we feel safe investing in it. And one of the groups I work with a lot are early startups, and everybody's trying to raise money. One of the biggest problems is they're unprepared because they're not clear and they haven't got their math together. They can't go to investors
Yeah.
and expect anybody to give them any money because they don't really have a business plan. They don't have a business model. It's just a great idea that they're excited about. And that's not enough to get somebody to give you any money. And if they won't invest in it, why would you invest in it? The first steps really are, can I get myself clear? Can I articulate the business in such a way that somebody would invest in it, including myself? Right. And that sets the stage for everything else, and then there's 18 other steps.
Yeah.
And so the book was really all about demystifying it and saying, look, this is something that, businesses have been started and developed for, hundreds of years now. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is a process to follow. And it really is, if we don't understand the process, it's very difficult to structure our own thinking and our behaviors and to be efficient about the process, because we're just, we're sort of bumbling around and going in circles trying to figure it out. And the
Yeah.
more of a straight line you can draw and follow, just follow the road, there's a paved path there. You don't have to go through the bush, right? Let's get on the highway and just start working our way along as quickly as we can. And we'll start to pick up speed as we get going. And so the book really is for two things. It's about creating that roadmap and to try to get people to stop thinking tactics. Start thinking about, what is the purpose behind this? You can do things 100 different ways, and you can get lost on doing them 100 of different ways and still not be clear on what the purpose is for why you're doing it. So the whole exercise is to say, look, there's really a 20-step sequence of different purposes And once you understand the purpose and where you are in the sequence, then you can start evaluating the different um, technologies and processes and tactics that will work in your circumstance and actually fit in and reinforce your business model. And that's just not what I've seen. It's exactly the opposite is what I usually run into. We're not clear, we're not committed, we're sort of, trying this and trying that, hoping for the best. And it is, it's sad because we're all small business people. We all have limited funds. I mean, so few of us come from wealthy backgrounds. I know I didn't. We're also trying to make the most of our money. And the easiest way we can do more with our money is to get ourselves prepared.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you for actually more like listening the call. I think from what I learned, it just speak volumes. Apart from just starting the business, knowing how the marketing and everything, knowing what purpose those things actually fit in the grand things of things, and how each of those roles plays out at the end of the day, making a business successful in seeing it from the perspective of the customer, understanding the integral purpose of why things are done the way they do. It's very, very key in building a business and in doing it right. Not just coming up with any gimmick that might work. Maybe it work once, but you don't really understand why it does work and what you could do different some other time. So John.
Other, the other, just one more point. The other big thing about ownership is that there's a sort of really common challenge is because we don't know it, we go to a supplier and say, hey, I'd really like you to help me with this. And more often than not, they're a salesperson trying to sell you whatever it is they are doing. Their job isn't to help you. Their job is to sell you whatever it is they're offering. And we tend to make this mistake of thinking that they're a consultant, that they're an advisor or a coach, and they have our best interest in mind. It's not often, I mean, it's not like that doesn't happen, but it's not that common. And so if we don't take ownership, we're very likely to get sold on something that is cool sounding, like really interesting and cool. It's not sex appeal. And typically it's quite useless.
Yeah.
It is one of those regrets waiting to happen.
Yeah. Understanding the integral. Yeah, thank you, John. So how can small business start building system instead of doing random acts of marketing?
Well, the system really comes out of those steps, right? What I would normally encourage people to do as part of the process is to think through the customer's journey as they move through your business. And when you hear customer journey, oftentimes people are thinking about just the sales process. But I would like you to think about it in terms of the entire journey. Now, some businesses, the sales process turns into a one-off project and it's done. But other businesses can have a very long-term relationship with the client where they're buying multiple times over the years. I know my electrician. I've had an electrician out to help me out on things probably 5 times in the last 2 years. I always use the same guy because he does a great job. And I'm probably going to have him back pretty soon to do some more things for me. And it really is, too often we're project, or we're thinking about the immediate short term instead of, I just did a great job. This client really liked what I did. How do I get him to tell other people about me? And how do I get him to call me back the next time? And we tend not to think about the long-term relationship. What is the opportunity if we were to keep that client over, the full length of whatever that relationship looks like, and then build our systems, our sales and marketing systems, anticipating that we're designing the whole process in order to keep clients for the full duration, right? To fully realize the opportunity in that relationship. And so when you start segmenting out, what does that journey look like for the client? What you're really doing is creating alignment. You're saying it's not all about them. It's not just, making it easy for them. I mean, it is about making it easy for them, but anything we do to make it easy for them makes it easy for us. So what we're cultivating or crafting is a long-term win-win relationship, right? And what kind of systems do we need to put in place in order to make that long-term relationship the default? Right? We're just expecting it to happen, and we're putting all the steps in place to make that happen as the most obvious thing that would happen, right? So I like the idea of just sort of, if I have a boulder on the top of a hill, what do I need to do to get it to roll down all the way to the bottom? Well, I probably want to move the trees out of the way
Yeah.
and the rocks and obstacles, right? And so we're really just trying to sort of anticipate if I want if I want it to go end to end, how do I streamline the process of getting them to go all that way and make that the system that we're creating as we develop our sales and marketing program. And
Yeah.
it changes the concept of what is sales and marketing. It's not just about making that initial sale. It's about starting a relationship and then cultivating that relationship over the most obvious course that it would take, or the most valuable course it could take, where we're generating the most value for the client and they're paying us appropriately for all that value we created.
Yeah.
And that really changes the whole dynamic of how people approach sales and marketing and systems development.
Yeah. Thank you, John. I think this is really more like an integral point to just make reference about thinking about the customer journey, being that if you know why, yeah, if every more like small business could keep the customer that they have working with you, just the way the electrician that's working with you now, working for like 5 years, if they could actually secure their spots with every client that very well for a lifetime deal, I think at the end of the every day, our small business will be profitable, being that they have a recurrent revenue every now and then. One that come into being, it's easier to pitch the idea of, uh, can you refer me to your friend? Can you refer me to your colleague? And I think it's a very lovely way to actually grow compared to more like secure a new client every now and then and still not being able to keep them for a longer period of time, especially when it comes to a handy job and those very ones that might require their service every now and then.
It's, I think we tend, as service providers, tend to underestimate how much help people actually want and are willing to pay for. We tend to make the mistake of thinking, well, they don't have money. They're always grinding me on price, right? And so, we sort of buy into that story that they don't have any money, and it's usually not the case. They just don't connect with the value that we're generating. And so if we can bridge that value, help them understand the value, then more often than not, they're going to want more and be willing to pay for more and continue to get more and then refer us to other people. And it's more of again, it's back to this mindset shift. We have to assume that they have the resources, even if they say they don't.
Yeah.
And who do we need to show up as in order to earn that long-term relationship with that client and generate all the extra profit? One of the coolest things about this is there's this old saying that, it costs 6 to 7 times more to get a new customer than it does to keep a customer. And I would say that plays out in real life. The cost to keep a client is usually a small fraction of getting a new one. And then that immediately changes your whole profitability on the project because you haven't, the cost of generating a new customer is increasingly high because of the amount of competition. And I've seen it rocket up like probably 2.5 times average cost of sale in the last 3 years alone, but just because of the increased competition. And so the value of keeping a client and developing that relationship has skyrocketed just even in the last couple of years. And so the shifting that thinking alone can make an enormous difference in how you run your business and how profitable it is.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
it diminishes the amount of running around too. You're not
Yeah.
chasing new clients all the time. You're just leveraging all of the effort you've already put in.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, you have seen business succeed and fail. What separates the two in terms of leadership and marketing?
I would say the bridge between leadership and marketing is I would try to encourage people to think about marketing as leadership. It's the whole exercise is leadership. You think about what is leadership. It's if I believe in something and I understand the value in terms of what I'm doing, how can I help people? How do I create value? The whole idea of leadership is I need to enroll people, help them understand it and buy into that value equation. And that buy-in is what generates investment. It also generates clients, it generates referrals, it generates employees that buy into the business, right? So I think marketing is just another word for leadership, or the other way around, right? Is when I hear marketing, I immediately think leadership. This is all about my leadership and how I'm communicating and how I'm enrolling people in a possibility where they're going to trade their money for value and benefit from that outcome. And then, like I said, with employees as well, it's like, this is what this company is about. We're helping these people by generating this kind of value. This is how we're differentiating ourselves from the competition. The whole thing is about leadership. It's just we have it sort of pegged as marketing is advertising or Facebook or some stupid tactic. And it all starts with our own understanding of who we are, what we're trying to bring to the marketplace, what value are we generating.
How do we enroll them in the possibility? Not just seeing them as a particular people to market to and to pitch an idea about them, but to find a way of actually more like bringing them into the pictures, making them see the values, enrolling them into the change you are trying to make. And this is really lovely way of actually more like looking at marketing as leadership. Thank you, John, for sharing your experience, your clarity, and your approach to simplifying sales and marketing. Your insights on leadership, fundamental, and customer centered strategies. We help a whole lot of business owners rethink how they grow. Yes, so everyone, you can learn more from John's work and grab his book at accruemarketing.com, plus access to his free ebooks and resources for small business owners who are just starting out. Thank you for joining us on the Aro Benaiah Show. It's really a pleasure once again. Have you.